Welcome to another episode of Ask the Pro. Ask the Pro is being sponsored by Buy Lekki Nana Properties. Today, we answer a question on civil engineering. I'm James by name. I'm a civil engineer. We'll be asking questions pertaining to my field. Let's go with the questions now.
First question. My friend sold a land to a client in an estate he wanted to build in immediately, but the estate management says he can't build at the moment. What could have accounted for such?
These are some of the questions we come across on a regular basis. When people buy property, land, they just want to start building if they have the fund, but they don't want to go through the process before you start building. Estate is an organized place, and if you want to build, you need to follow the process. You have to have approval. If the estate you are buying from has not gotten approval to construct, you cannot just start constructing on that estate. Then, if you want to construct, you need to get your own approval for the house or property you want to build. If that is the reason why they ask you not to build. It could also be that the estate owners themselves has not also settled the locals, which we call, they have to be settled so that they don't come and stop anybody working on site. You have to find out what are the reasons why they are saying you should not build. If it's settled locals, then that can be done. But if it's getting approval, it may be the estate themselves already processing their approval, but it's not yet out for them to build. You have to wait. But if they are not processing at all and you still want to build, then you have to get your own approval. It's not as if they are being wicked. No. Now think of it, since estate is an organized setting, if you are building an estate without approval, they will not just shut your house, they will shut the estate. The estate owner will not want that to happen to the property. It's good we follow through the process too. The other aspect of it is this. Some estates have prototypes. That means they have the kind of building that they want in their estate. Some sites might be bungalow, others might be a duplex. And now if you are coming to build a bungalow or 2-bedroom in the side that they say have marked for duplex, it will be difficult. It will not match what they want. It's always good that you follow the process. Once you follow the process and communicate with the estate management, with your engineer, and things will work. So it's possible to buy a land on estate and build when the processes are being followed.
Looking at the high cost of housing on the island, are there other options to affordable housing?
There are other options. Let me take your mind back to when some of us were growing up, the early 70s, mid 80s. In our villages, almost every family have houses, no tenants. Why? Because their buildings were made up of locally sourced materials. They don't import any material. The bricks, the sand, they are locally sourced from their locality. Some the mud, some maybe wood. And because of that, they are building, the cost of the buildings. So if we can go back to using locally sorted materials, it will cut down the cost of building and it will make it possible for the average man to have their own building. For instance, you see of recent the use of bottled water filled with sand to construct a building. Put sand inside. Sand is cheap. But most Nigerians, or most people, are not yet acclimatized with it. They feel that it is not possible, it's old fashioned, it's not the end thing. And they go for what they already know, the normal bricks we use. If people can be oriented to let them know that these other options is still doesn't make you a less person when you live in a house made of wood or live in a house made of mud stone rather, or live in a house made of plastic bottle with sand. In that way, we can construct low cost building. Then the other area to it too is the government. For instance, the cost of getting an approval for a building now is very expensive. The cost of also getting approval for other taxation is expensive. At the end of the day, who pays those costs? The one buying the building. If government can give low costs on getting approval and other taxes, it will also reduce the cost of this building project that we handle. So, two areas to it: using locally sourced materials, then having low taxation on our building project. In that way, we can have accommodation that is affordable for the masses.
When inspecting a newly built property and you notice cracks on the wall, what does it mean? Is it a bad sign?
It's a yes or no answer. it can be a bad sign and it may not be a bad sign because there are different causes and different things that causes cracks on a building. Let's discuss three for today. The first one is plastering sand. Plastered sand are clay soil. They have some, let me use the word starch. They are starchy. And if there are too much starch on the sand you are using, when the plaster dried, you will see finger cracks on it. That is one type of crack. But that is not a bad sign because it doesn't affect the structure. Then too, there's another type of crack that is caused by settling. Maybe as they were building fast project, the soil or some part of the building was not well compacted. Then after some time, when that part settles, the blocks or the concrete are not they are not that flexible. Once it settles, you see movement, so you see cracks. And if it's for that settle, it will not continue for a long time. Once it settles, the crack stops. But there are another kind of crack that is very dangerous. Crack that is as a result of structural failure. That type of cracks grows. It starts little, but over time, it becomes bigger and bigger. You can even see through from that to the next room if possible. If you want to watch out for these cracks, if you are not too sure of the kind of cracks you see in the building you are expecting, it's better you call a professional to check the crack and know which type of crack it is and if it will have effect on the building. In that way, you avoid buying a defected building.
As a newbie in the construction industry, what are some of the standards one must adhere to when constructing a building?
When constructing a building, use professionals. Professionals follow the right process. Get a soil test done. The soil test will now tell the structural engineer the type of drawing that he will approve for that project. Then the civil engineer himself will follow the structural drawing. For instance, the structural engineer may specify that in this particular building, you have to do rafts. The size of the raft, the height will be mentioned. Then the reinforcement in the raft, how many there are going to be in that raft, that beam, will also be specified. The size of the columns will be specified depending on the number of floors you are going. Then the beams, each of the beams, their sizes, their thickness, and the reinforcement size will also be specified in the structural drawing. If you use professionals and they stick to the process, you have a good building without any distraction. Then secondly too, you also make sure that the materials you are buying are also not substandard materials. Because sometimes, because of cost, they will buy low quality materials. Let me give an instance, like rod. Some person will tell you that tiger rods are too expensive, but they are good. They will go for a cheaper one. Maybe those other ones that those Aboki must have picked, they now remelt them and they now sell them to the public. When you are using that kind of reinforcement, you have problem. Because even when the workers are using them, they want to bend those rods. As they try to bend, they break. But the real rod will not break, it will bend. If you follow the right one, those problems will be avoided. Avoid cutting corners and use professionals.
With the frequent collapse of buildings in Nigeria, what advice can you offer for this to be avoided?
To avoid building collapses, there are two major areas we have to address. The government have been singing it, and people in our profession have also been singing it. First, follow the design of that building. The structural drawing, follow it when you are constructing. Then second, avoid using substandard or fake materials. Now, when we talk about follow the design, before a building is erected, test is done. Then a structural engineer would have a structural drawing as to that carries the load of that house, the type of columns, beams that will be used. Now, most people will not follow that drawing. They now follow shortcut, they do something less. At the end of the day, a building that has a design for just 2 floors will not be carrying 4, 5 floors. And the second one is when substandard materials are being used, that deliberately or because of or by mistake, whichever one. When we use substandard material, we have ridiculous. The proper ministry shall not be followed. The proper dimension will also be followed. When these two areas are addressed, you see that the building collapse issue will reduce drastically.
What are the possible signs to look out for when inspecting a property in order to avoid buying a defect property?
This is another good question. When you are out to buy an already built property, there are several signs to look for, but let's talk about three. The first sign you look for when you approach the building, check if the building is slanting, if one part is sinking or not. But most time when people want to buy a building, they just wash maybe the doors, the windows, and they go in. Stand in front of the building and check if the building is sinking one side. That is a very good sign to check and know that that building has problem. Then the second is check the level of the DPC and the existing road. Damp-proof course, that is DPC. The level of the damp-proof course, what we call DPC, and the existing road. If the level of your DPC is lower compared to existing road, it's a sign of danger. Then the third one to look for again is major cracks. Major cracks. These three are some of the things we look for when you are expecting an existing building you want to purchase. This is all we have for you, friends, today on Ask the Pro. I believe you find this program resourceful. Why not share, like the page, so that others also benefit from it?